The sound of diesel engines rumbles across the South Dakota prairie as dawn breaks on Tuesday, September 17th. 25 vehicles, sheriff's cruisers, county trucks, private security SUVs with tinted windows, crawl down the dirt road like a military convoy approaching enemy territory. Sarah Mankiller stands on her porch in the pale morning light. She's 70 years old, gray braids hanging over her shoulders, thick glasses perched on her nose, wearing a traditional Lakota star quilt wrapped around her shoulders against the September chill. In one hand, she holds an old leather document case, cracked with age. In the other, her smartphone, already recording. Sheriff Tom Breckenridge steps out of his cruiser, bullhorn in one hand, eviction papers in the other. Behind him, 24 more vehicles disgorge their occupants. Officers in tactical vests, county officials with clipboards, private security contractors with the cold eyes of men who do this for money, not duty. The sheriff raises the bullhorn. His voice echoes across the grassland, scattering a pair of hawks from a nearby cottonwood tree. Ms. Mankiller, by order of the County Court of Bennett County, South Dakota, you have 1 hour to vacate these premises. This property has been condemned under eminent domain for public development purposes. Please gather essential personal belongings and exit the residence peacefully. Sarah doesn't move. She speaks first in Lakota, her voice clear and strong, then switches to English for the cameras she knows are coming. Sheriff Breckenridge, you and these men are standing on sovereign land protected by the Treaty of Fort Laramie, signed September 17, 1851, exactly 175 years ago today. This eviction violates federal law under Title 25, United States Code, Section 177. I am documenting this illegal action under federal statute. Behind her, a traditional Lakota flag hangs from the porch rail, 7 red and white stripes with a blue circle of white stars. Behind Breckenridge, the first news van pulls up, KELO TV out of Sioux Falls. Sarah had called them at 5 in the morning. This is not a surprised old woman being victimized. This is a trap being sprung. Before we continue, comment below where in the world you're watching from. And subscribe to this channel because tomorrow's story is one you absolutely cannot miss. The convoy completes its deployment like a well-rehearsed operation. Officers spread across the property line, creating a perimeter. County officials set up a command post at the road. News crews, now 3 of them, position cameras on public right-of-way, their telephoto lenses trained on Sarah's small house and the 47 acres stretching behind it. From a black Lincoln Navigator, Marcus Halstead emerges. He's 58, silver-haired, wearing a Patagonia vest over a tailored shirt. The uniform of the modern land developer who wants to appear outdoorsy and approachable. His company, Great Plains Development Corporation, is worth $400 million on paper. On paper being the operative phrase. Beside him, County Commissioner Patricia Voss steps out of a county SUV, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing her best "I'm here to help" expression. She's been practicing that expression for 18 months, ever since Halstead's company started making very generous campaign contributions. Sarah stands motionless on her porch, but her eyes are cataloging everything. Her phone, mounted on a small tripod, captures every vehicle, every face, every movement. She speaks clearly into a second recording device. September 17, 2026, 6:47 a.m. Mountain Time. I count 25 vehicles, approximately 40 personnel. No federal agents visible. No tribal liaison present. No archaeological survey team despite known burial sites on this property. From the gathering crowd of neighbors, some tribal members from the nearby reservation, some white ranchers from adjacent properties, an elderly Lakota man in a Vietnam veteran's cap watches with folded arms. 3 more elders join him, forming a silent witness line. Sheriff Breckenridge approaches the porch, his face showing the discomfort of a man who knows something isn't quite right, but has his orders. He's third-generation Bennett County Sheriff. His grandfather held the same badge in 1952. That fact will become very important very soon. Ms. Mankiller, I don't want any trouble here. We can do this the easy way, Sheriff. Sarah's voice cuts through his rehearsed speech. May I see the court order? He hesitates, then hands up the documents. Sarah puts on reading glasses, in addition to the thick glasses she already wears, and examines the papers with the focused intensity of someone who knows exactly what she's looking for. She reads aloud, her voice carrying to the news cameras. Signed by County Judge Herbert Morrison. Authority cited, eminent domain for public use. Legal description of property. Lot 47, Section 12, Township 3 North, Range 8 East. She looks up, directly at the nearest camera. This legal description is based on a 1952 county survey. That survey was fraudulent. The actual legal description, based on the 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie, places this land within permanent Lakota territory. County court lacks jurisdiction. Halstead steps forward, his practiced charm deployed like a weapon. Ms. Mankiller, Sarah. May I call you Sarah? I know this is emotional. This land has been in your family for decades. But we've been more than generous. $800,000 for 47 acres. That's triple market value. The offer still stands. You can take the money, find a beautiful new place. Sarah speaks, first in Lakota, then in English. This land is not property, Mr. Halstead. It is Wichonzan, the place we belong to. You cannot buy the bones of our ancestors, and you have no legal authority to take them. Ma'am, with all due respect, the courts have ruled. County court, which lacks jurisdiction over federal treaty land. You know this. Your attorneys know this, which is why you're rushing to bulldoze before federal review can be triggered. Commissioner Voss steps forward, her smile showing the strain. Ms. Mankiller, we have all proper authorizations. The land was legally rezoned for public use after proper hearings. Patricia. Sarah's voice drops to conversational volume, but every word is captured by her recording devices. We both know those zoning hearings violated tribal consultation requirements under the National Historic Preservation Act and the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. I have the meeting minutes. All 4 hearings. I also have recordings of your phone conversations with Mr. Halstead, discussing the $400,000 in consulting fees his company paid you. The color drains from Voss's face like water from a cracked basin. Sarah continues, her voice steady. I have documented every violation, every fraudulent permit, every bribed official. For 5 years, I've been waiting for you to make exactly this mistake. A public, illegal eviction attempt. Filmed, witnessed, undeniable. The news cameras zoom in. This is no longer a routine eviction story. This is something bigger. Sarah descends from her porch, moving with the careful deliberation of a 70-year-old woman whose knees have carried her through 7 decades of fighting. She gestures to the news crews. Follow me. The people of South Dakota should see what Mr. Halstead plans to pave over for parking lots. She leads them past her house, across prairie grass still wet with morning dew. The September sun is higher now, painting the landscape in shades of gold and amber. She stops at a section of land marked with small stone cairns and wooden posts bearing red survey flags. In 2019, the University of South Dakota conducted an archaeological survey of this property at my request. Professor James Whitehorse led the team. She produces a document from her leather case, a formal archaeological report, bound and official. They found 47 burial sites, dating from 1680 to 1890. My ancestors. Your ancestors, if you're Lakota. Cheyenne. Arapaho. The people who signed the Treaty of Fort Laramie. She points to a newer grave marker, simple but well-maintained. My son Michael is buried here. Sergeant Michael Mankiller, U.S. Army. Killed in Iraq, March 2007. He died defending this country. His last request was to be buried with his grandfather and great-grandfather on land our people have protected for generations. A news reporter, young and visibly moved, asks, Ms. Mankiller, are you saying Mr. Halstead plans to build over burial sites? Not plans to, knows he is. The archaeological survey was submitted to the county as required by law. It was never presented at the zoning hearings. Commissioner Voss received it. Mr. Halstead's attorneys received it. They proceeded anyway. She turns to face Halstead directly. The developer's practiced charm is evaporated, replaced by poorly concealed fury. Under the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, this is federally protected land. Under the National Historic Preservation Act, it cannot be developed without tribal consultation and federal approval. You have neither. This eviction is not only illegal, Mr. Halstead. It's a federal crime. Sheriff Breckenridge pulls off his hat, running a hand through thinning hair. Ms. Mankiller, I have a court order from a county judge who lacks jurisdiction. Sheriff, I'm giving you legal notice. If you proceed with this eviction, you are personally liable for violations of federal law. I will file criminal complaints with the FBI. I will file civil suits in federal court. And I will personally ensure that every officer here is named as a defendant. She produces another document from her case, a pre-printed legal notice clearly prepared weeks ago. This is formal notice under federal statute. You are now legally informed. What you do next is your choice, but you cannot claim ignorance. Breckenridge takes the document with shaking hands. He's beginning to understand that this is not a simple eviction. This is a legal ambush. Behind them, more vehicles arrive. Not police, protesters. Tribal members from Pine Ridge, Rosebud, Standing Rock. Some have driven through the night after Sarah's 5 a.m. phone calls to the tribal councils. They carry signs, honor the treaties, sacred land, we are still here. And with them, more news crews, national outlets now, CNN, MSNBC. Word is spreading on social media. Hashtag Stand With Sarah is beginning to trend. Halstead's patience snaps. He pulls out his phone, makes a call, speaks in clipped tones. Within minutes, a flatbed truck arrives carrying a bulldozer. His private security contractors begin unloading it, their movements efficient and aggressive. The tribal members form a human chain around the burial markers. Elders in the front line, younger activists behind them. A woman in her 20s starts live streaming on TikTok. Within 30 minutes, she'll have 200,000 viewers. Sarah speaks into her recording device. 7:42 a.m. Private contractors employed by Great Plains Development Corporation are preparing to bulldoze federally protected burial grounds. Sheriff Breckenridge, I am formally requesting that you prevent the desecration of Native American graves under federal law. Breckenridge looks between the bulldozer, the human chain, the news cameras, and the legal notice in his hand. His radio crackles with a call from the county prosecutor's office. He steps away to take it. When he returns, his face is ashen. Mr. Halstead, I need to speak with you, privately. Sheriff, we're on a schedule. Now, Mr. Halstead. They step away from the cameras. Through the prairie silence, fragments of their conversation drift back. County prosecutor says the judge may have exceeded his jurisdiction. I don't care what the prosecutor says. Federal law enforcement has been notified. By whom? Sarah, standing close enough to hear, answers that question for the cameras. By me. At 6:15 this morning, I contacted the FBI's Indian Country Crimes Division. They're dispatching agents from their Rapid City office. Estimated arrival, 10 a.m. Halstead spins toward her, his composure finally shattered. You had no right. I had every right and every legal obligation. Federal law requires reporting of treaty violations and threats to protected burial sites. I'm a retired federal attorney. I know the law, Mr. Halstead, better than you, better than your lawyers, better than every county official you've bribed. That's slander. It's documentation. She holds up her leather case. 43 years of documentation. Would you like to see it? Or would you prefer to wait for the FBI? A BMW sedan pulls through the crowd, parking near Sarah's house. A woman in her mid-40s emerges, carrying a briefcase, wearing a power suit that speaks of federal courtrooms and high-stakes litigation. She has Sarah's cheekbones, Sarah's direct gaze. That's my daughter, Sarah tells the cameras. Rebecca Mankiller, attorney at law, Harvard, like her mother. Currently representing the Lakota Treaty Council. Rebecca strides to Sheriff Breckenridge with the confidence of someone who has done this before. She hands him a document, federal injunction, issued this morning at 6:30 a.m. by Judge Catherine Chen, United States District Court for the District of South Dakota. All development activities on this property are stayed pending federal review of treaty claims. The eviction order is void. Breckenridge reads it, his shoulders sagging with something that might be relief. He's been given an out. Mr. Halstead, this eviction cannot proceed. Federal court has jurisdiction. That's impossible. We weren't notified of any federal filing. Rebecca's smile is sharp. We filed under emergency provisions for protection of cultural resources. Notice requirements are different when there's imminent threat of irreparable harm. Bulldozing burial sites qualifies. She turns to the cameras, her voice carrying across the prairie. My mother and I have been building this case for 5 years. We've documented every violation, every fraudulent permit, every illegal payment. We filed a comprehensive complaint this morning alleging violation of the 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie, violation of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, violation of the National Historic Preservation Act, fraud in the procurement of county permits, conspiracy to defraud indigenous land claims. The federal government is now involved. This is no longer a county matter. Halstead is on his phone, screaming at his lawyers. Voss is in her vehicle, also on the phone, her voice high and panicked. The bulldozer sits silent, its operator having wisely decided not to operate heavy machinery in the middle of a federal case. Sheriff Breckenridge addresses his deputies. Pack it up. This eviction is canceled. As the officers begin to withdraw, Sarah speaks one more time for the cameras. This land was guaranteed to the Lakota people by treaty in 1851. 7 bands signed that treaty: Oglala, Brule, Minneconjou, Hunkpapa, Sihasapa, Two Kettles, Sans Arc. The United States government signed it. Article 6 of the Constitution makes it the supreme law of this land. For 175 years they've tried to take it, with violence, with fraudulent treaties, with legal theft. Today we prove the treaty still has power. Today we show that indigenous people will not be erased. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have 43 years of evidence to present to the FBI. She turns and walks to her house. The cameras follow. And what they see inside stops them in their tracks. The interior of Sarah Mankiller's house is not what anyone expected. From the outside, it looks like a modest home, small, aging, the kind of place a woman on a fixed income might live. Inside, it's a professional legal archive that would make a law firm jealous. The living room has been converted into a command center. The walls are covered with maps, historical maps, modern maps, survey maps, treaty maps. Some date back to 1851, carefully preserved in archival sleeves. Others are contemporary geological surveys with overlays showing archaeological sites. File cabinets line every available wall, each drawer labeled by year and subject. 1851 to 1890, treaty period. 1890 to 1920, allotment era. 1950 to 1960, survey fraud. 2020 to 2026, current conspiracy. A large table in the center holds a computer setup with dual monitors, a professional scanner, a backup drive array, and a label maker. This is not a hobby. This is a life's work. One entire wall is a timeline, a massive corkboard with photographs, documents, and colored string connecting them like a detective's murder board. Because that's essentially what it is. A map of systematic theft spanning 175 years. The news crews film it all, stunned into silence. Sarah sets her leather document case on the table and opens it with the reverence of someone handling sacred objects. Inside, wrapped in acid-free tissue paper, is a document in a protective sleeve. Treaty of Fort Laramie, she says, September 17, 1851. This is a certified copy from the National Archives. I obtained it in 1983. She carefully unfolds a large map, also in protective covering. Original surveyor's map from the Treaty Commission. This shows the boundaries agreed to by the United States and the Lakota Nation. She points to a section marked in faded ink. This land, all 47 acres, well within treaty boundaries, never ceded, never sold, never legally transferred to the United States government or any private party. A reporter asks, "Ms. Mankiller, how long have you been preparing this?" 43 years. My husband Thomas first discovered the discrepancies in the county land records in 1983. He was a surveyor for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. He noticed that the 1952 county survey didn't match the original treaty boundaries. She moves to the timeline wall, her finger tracing the colored strings. 1851, treaty signed. Land guaranteed to Lakota Nation in perpetuity. 1890, Wounded Knee Massacre. Survivors forced to sign new land agreements under military occupation. Those agreements are void. You cannot obtain legal consent at gunpoint. 1952. This is where it gets interesting. She pulls down a thick file folder, opening it to reveal yellowed documents. In 1952, the Bureau of Indian Affairs conducted a resurvey of treaty lands in South Dakota. The surveyor was a man named Charles Whitman. His official survey moved the treaty boundary 3 miles east. Suddenly, thousands of acres of Lakota land became county land. She produces another document, a photocopy of a handwritten journal. This is Whitman's personal journal. I found it in a collection donated to the South Dakota Historical Society in 1998. Listen to this entry from August 14, 1952. Supervisor Breckenridge instructed me to adjust the boundary markers per his specifications. When I objected that this did not match the treaty descriptions, he said the treaty was outdated and that economic development required flexible interpretation. I have documented the true boundary in my private records should this ever be challenged. Rebecca picks up the thread. Supervisor Breckenridge. That was Howard Breckenridge, grandfather of the current sheriff. He was a BIA regional supervisor and a state senator. He orchestrated the fraudulent survey to benefit ranching and mining interests, including his own family's holdings. Sarah continues. The fraudulent 1952 survey became the basis for all subsequent land transactions. In 1953, the county sold this land it didn't own, to a ranching corporation. That sale was illegal. It was the sale of stolen property. In 1970, my father-in-law, Thomas Mankiller Sr., purchased this land from the ranching corporation. He didn't know it was stolen. He thought he was buying it legitimately. He paid $40,000, his entire life savings. When my husband discovered the fraud in 1983, he tried to fight it. He filed complaints with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, with the state, with county officials. He was called a conspiracy theorist, a troublemaker. Eventually, he was fired from his job for erratic behavior. Her voice catches, the only emotion she's shown all morning. The stress killed him. Heart attack in 2008, age 63. He died, still fighting for this land, still trying to prove the treaty was valid. I promised him I would finish what he started, and I've spent the last 18 years doing exactly that. Professor James Whitehorse arrives as Sarah is explaining the timeline. He's 62, Lakota, wearing a University of South Dakota windbreaker and carrying 3 banker's boxes of documents. Sorry I'm late, Sarah. Had to make copies of everything before I left the university. He nods to the cameras. I'm Professor James Whitehorse, Department of History and Indigenous Studies at USD. I've been researching treaty violations with Ms. Mankiller for 28 years. He sets the boxes on the table and begins pulling out maps. This isn't an isolated incident. Sarah's land is one of 14 separate parcels that were resurveyed out of treaty protection between 1950 and 1962. He spreads the maps across the table, overlaying them to show the pattern. Original treaty boundary, here. 1952 resurvey, here. You see the shift? 3 miles east. That shift removed 4,700 acres from treaty protection. All 14 parcels are within that zone. Current status of those parcels. 12 are owned by private developers or mining companies. 2 are county-owned land designated for public use. Total current development value, $2.3 billion. If Mr. Halstead succeeds in developing Sarah's land, it sets precedent for the other 13 parcels. This isn't just about 47 acres. It's about 4,700 acres and whether treaties mean anything at all. Rebecca pulls up a spreadsheet on the computer. We've tracked campaign donations from Great Plains Development Corporation and related entities. In the last 18 months, Governor Michaels received $850,000. Senator Patterson received $640,000. 3 county commissioners, including Patricia Voss, received $120,000 each. County Judge Morrison, who signed the eviction order, received $40,000 as a legal consulting fee. Total, nearly $2 million in donations to officials involved in approving this development. All within 18 months of the archaeological survey confirming burial sites. Sarah adds, they knew about the graves. They knew about the treaty issues. They chose to proceed anyway because the profit was too large to resist. $900 million for a casino resort on sacred ground. She pulls up the developer's marketing materials on screen. Glossy renderings of a massive resort complex with the tagline, "Experience authentic Native American heritage." The irony, she says bitterly, is that they plan to market this as a Native American cultural experience. Dream catchers in the gift shop. Authentic architecture, built on the graves of actual Native Americans, on stolen land, while the living Native community is evicted. Professor Whitehorse shakes his head. Cultural genocide with a gift shop. It's not new, just more brazen than usual. By mid-morning, Sarah's property has been transformed. The eviction force has withdrawn, but they've been replaced by something more powerful: community. More than 200 people have gathered. Tribal members from across South Dakota, environmental activists, indigenous rights groups, seminary students from the nearest Catholic college, their social justice professor leading them in solidarity, even some white ranchers who've read the news coverage and understand what theft looks like. A traditional teepee has been erected on the property. The Elder Council has built a sacred fire. Traditional songs drift across the prairie, mixing with the diesel smell from the departed police vehicles. News trucks now number in the double digits. National coverage is beginning. CNN has sent a crew. The New York Times has a reporter on site. Social media is exploding with the story. Sarah and Rebecca stand on the porch, addressing the cameras in a formal press conference. Rebecca speaks first, her attorney voice crisp and authoritative. At 6:30 this morning, we filed a comprehensive federal lawsuit. The defendants are Great Plains Development Corporation and its CEO, Marcus Halstead, Bennett County, and the 3 commissioners who approved the development. The State of South Dakota Bureau of Indian Affairs for failure to protect treaty land, and the United States Department of the Interior for systematic failure to enforce treaty obligations. We are seeking permanent injunction protecting all 4,700 acres within the fraudulent survey zone. Return of all improperly transferred land to the Lakota Nation. Federal protection of all burial sites under NAGPRA. Damages for 175 years of treaty violations. And criminal prosecution of any officials who knowingly violated federal law. Sarah takes over. We're also requesting a comprehensive federal review of all treaty land in South Dakota. How many other parcels were stolen through fraudulent surveys? How many other burial sites have been paved over? How many other families were evicted from their own land? This ends now. Not just for my 47 acres. For all of it. A reporter asks, "Miss Mankiller, you mentioned the FBI is coming. When?" Sarah checks her watch. "They should be here in about 20 minutes. We've been coordinating with Special Agent Linda Morrison of the FBI's Indian Country Crimes Division for the past 3 years. She's been waiting for us to build an airtight case before moving. Now we have it." 3 years? Another reporter asks. "You've been planning this for 3 years?" Rebecca smiles. We've been planning this for 43 years. The last 3 years, we've had FBI support. Sarah adds, I learned something from my husband's fight. He tried to work within the system, file complaints, trust the process. They destroyed him for it. I decided to be smarter, build an overwhelming case, wait for them to commit crimes on camera, then trigger federal intervention all at once. She gestures to the gathered community and makes sure we're not alone. My husband fought by himself. Today, I have 200 witnesses, 7 tribal nations standing together, legal representation, media coverage, federal law enforcement. They can't make me disappear the way they made him disappear. Her phone buzzes. She checks it, nods. The FBI just passed through Martin. They'll be here in 10 minutes. Mr. Halstead, if you're still on the property, you might want to consult with your attorneys. Halstead, watching from his luxury RV command center at the property line, makes a quick calculation and retreats to his vehicle. The convoy of developer trucks and security vehicles begins a hasty withdrawal. They'll be back. But for now, they're in retreat. 4 black SUVs with federal plates pull onto the property at exactly 10 a.m. Special Agent Linda Morrison emerges from the lead vehicle, a Navajo woman in her late 30s, FBI credentials on her belt, the bearing of someone who's seen every kind of treaty violation and is tired of all of them. She approaches Sarah with genuine respect, shaking her hand. Ms. Mankiller, I've read your entire submission, all 2,400 pages. This is the most thoroughly documented treaty case I've ever encountered. Sarah nods. 43 years of work, Agent Morrison. I wanted to make absolutely certain there was no ambiguity. There isn't. We're executing federal search warrants at 4 locations: Halstead's corporate offices, the county administration building, the courthouse, and the regional BIA office. We're seizing computers, files, communications, financial records. We're also serving federal preservation orders on all 4,700 acres. No sales, no transfers, no development until federal review is complete. She turns to address the gathered crowd and cameras. The FBI takes treaty violations seriously. The United States government made promises in 1851. Those promises are the supreme law of this land. When state or local governments violate those promises, it becomes a federal crime. We're here to investigate those crimes and, where appropriate, bring charges. Rebecca provides Agent Morrison with digital copies of all their evidence, terabytes of scanned documents, recordings, photographs, financial records, archaeological surveys, historical research. Morrison assigns 2 agents to begin taking statements from Sarah, from witnesses, from tribal elders who remember when their grandparents were evicted from adjacent lands in the 1950s. By noon, the FBI's evidence response team has arrived with mobile forensics equipment. This is no longer a property dispute. This is a federal investigation into conspiracy, fraud, and civil rights violations. At Great Plains Development Corporation headquarters in Rapid City, FBI agents arrive with a search warrant at 10:47 a.m. They stream into the building with boxes and computer forensics equipment. Marcus Halstead watches from his office as agents seize hard drives from the IT department, cart away file cabinets, photograph everything. His corporate attorney stands beside him, looking increasingly pale. Marcus, they have a federal warrant. That means a federal judge reviewed the evidence and found probable cause for crimes. This is serious. I know it's serious, Halstead snaps. We've invested $47 million. We have investors, contractors, suppliers expecting to break ground in 6 weeks. We have bondholders, bank loans. You need to think about criminal liability, not the project. There's no criminal liability. We followed proper procedures. Did you? The attorney pulls out his tablet, pulling up news coverage. Because the evidence Ms. Mankiller presented shows you knew about the burial sites. You knew about the treaty issues. You proceeded anyway and paid county officials to ignore federal law. That's conspiracy. That's fraud. Marcus, that's 10 to 20 years in federal prison. Halstead stares at the screen showing FBI agents carrying boxes out of his building. His carefully constructed empire is crumbling in real time, filmed for the evening news. At the County Administration Building, Commissioner Patricia Voss is having a panic attack in her office as FBI agents confiscate her computer and her personal cell phone. Her attorney has already explained her options: cooperate fully and hope for leniency, or face federal conspiracy charges. She's chosen cooperation. By 2 p.m., she's sitting in an FBI interview room, providing detailed testimony about the scheme, the kickbacks, the fraudulent zoning hearings where the archaeological survey was never mentioned, the pressure from the governor's office to approve the development, every conversation with Halstead where they discussed hiding the treaty issues. She's saving herself and destroying everyone else in the process. By evening, Sarah Mankiller's face is on every major news network. CNN, FBI investigates alleged $2 billion indigenous land theft scheme in South Dakota. MSNBC, 70-year-old Lakota lawyer exposes decades of treaty violations. Fox News, federal raid on South Dakota county offices in land dispute. The New York Times front page, the woman who wouldn't leave. How one elder's 43-year fight could reshape tribal land rights. Social media explodes. #StandWithSarah trends globally. TikTok videos from Native youth explain the treaty and the case, many going viral with millions of views. Celebrities amplify the story. Indigenous activists worldwide see it as a pivotal moment. Professors assign it as a case study in their classes. Law students debate the legal arguments. Historians contextualize the 175-year pattern of theft. And in Congress, Senator Elizabeth Warren takes to the Senate floor. What's happening in South Dakota is exactly why I've been pushing for stronger treaty enforcement. Sarah Mankiller spent 43 years doing the work the federal government should have been doing. She documented, she researched, she built an airtight case. Because she knew that Indigenous people don't get the benefit of the doubt. They have to prove everything beyond any possible question. And even then, even with 43 years of documentation, they sent 25 armed officers to evict her at dawn. They sent a bulldozer to desecrate graves. They thought they could intimidate a 70-year-old woman into giving up. They were wrong, and I'm calling for congressional hearings on the systematic failure to protect treaty rights across this country. Back in South Dakota, Governor Michaels holds a hasty press conference trying to distance himself from the scandal. I was not fully informed of all the legal complexities surrounding this development. Upon learning of potential treaty issues, I have ordered an immediate halt to all related projects pending federal review. I am also returning the campaign contributions from Great Plains Development Corporation to avoid any appearance of impropriety. A reporter shouts, "Governor, you received $850,000 from them. How are you not fully informed?" I relied on my staff and on county officials to conduct proper due diligence. Your chief of staff was copied on emails about the burial sites. Those emails are part of the FBI evidence. The governor's composure cracks. I have no further comment at this time. My office will cooperate fully with federal investigators. He leaves the podium to a barrage of shouted questions. His political career, built over 3 decades, is collapsing in an afternoon. The victory celebration on Sarah's property continues into the evening. The sacred fire burns bright. Traditional songs echo across the prairie. Over 300 people have gathered now, the largest assembly of Lakota bands in decades, all united around Sarah's stand. But Sarah knows this isn't over. Cornered animals are dangerous. Cornered developers with hundreds of millions at stake are even more so. At 2:47 a.m., motion sensors around her property trigger silent alarms on Rebecca's phone. 3 men in dark clothing and ski masks approach the house from the back, moving with practiced stealth. They carry bolt cutters for locks, crowbars for doors, and empty duffel bags for what they plan to steal. But Sarah planned for this. She's been planning for everything. Floodlights blaze to life, illuminating the property like a football stadium. The men freeze, caught in the glare like deer on a highway. And then they realize they're surrounded. The 300 people sleeping in tents and vehicles weren't sleeping as soundly as they appeared. Within seconds, a human wall forms between the intruders and the house. tribal members, activists, seminary students, old Vietnam veterans, all of them wide awake and angry. The intruders run. They make it 20 feet before more people cut off their escape. Nowhere to go. They're caught. Sheriff Breckenridge arrives within minutes. Rebecca had called him the moment the alarms triggered. He's brought his entire night shift, and he looks like a man who's decided which side of history he wants to be on. On your knees, hands behind your heads. His deputies search the three men while Sarah films everything, still in her nightgown, but with her phone steady and recording. They find lock-picking tools, a device for jamming wireless signals, 3 burner phones, and $50,000 cash on each man, advance payment for tonight's work, with the promise of more if successful. But the smoking gun is the text messages on one of the burner phones. Breckenridge reads them aloud for Sarah's camera. Objective is computers and hard drives. Destroy if you can't extract. $150,000 bonus upon completion. There cannot be evidence for FBI review. The sending number is traced. It goes to a phone registered to Halstead's head of security. Well, Breckenridge says heavily, that's attempted evidence destruction. Conspiracy. This is federal now. He looks at Sarah. I'm sorry for this morning, for not asking harder questions before I showed up with an eviction order. My grandfather helped steal this land. I don't want to be part of that legacy anymore. Sarah nods. Sheriff, you did the right thing tonight. That matters. As the three men are led away in handcuffs, Sarah addresses the cameras that the news crews have set up. They're doing 24-hour coverage now. This story too big to miss a moment. They tried to destroy the evidence. Instead, they created more. Attempted evidence destruction, conspiracy, witness intimidation, and Mr. Halstead just connected himself directly to federal crimes. She checks her watch. The FBI arrives in 4 hours for their scheduled meeting. I think we'll have something new to show them. Federal Courthouse, Rapid City, South Dakota. 2 weeks later. The courtroom is packed beyond capacity. Overflow rooms have been set up with video feeds. Outside, protesters and supporters number in the thousands. Federal Judge Catherine Chin presides, a federal appointee with a reputation for thorough, careful rulings based entirely on law, not politics. She's reviewed all 2,400 pages of evidence. She's heard preliminary arguments. Now comes the hearing on the permanent injunction. Rebecca Mankiller stands to argue for her mother and the Lakota Treaty Council. She's wearing traditional beadwork over her suit jacket, a statement of identity and purpose. Your Honor, the law in this case is crystal clear. The Treaty of Fort Laramie, ratified by Congress in 1851, guaranteed the Lakota Nation permanent ownership of the territory described in Article 5. That treaty is federal law under Article 6 of the Constitution, the supreme law of this land. The 1952 survey that moved the boundary was conducted without tribal consultation, without federal authorization, and based on the personal directive of a state senator who had financial interests in the outcome. The surveyor's own journal confirms he was ordered to falsify the boundary. Every land transaction after 1952 was based on that fraudulent survey. Every sale, every transfer, every permit. All of it void as fruit of the poisonous tree. The 2026 eviction order was issued by a county court that lacked jurisdiction. You cannot evict someone from federal treaty land with a county court order. It's a legal impossibility. We're requesting permanent federal protection of all 4,700 acres within the fraudulent survey zone, return of the land to Lakota Nation ownership, federal protection of all burial sites, and damages for 175 years of treaty violations. She pauses, then adds, Your Honor, my mother's husband died fighting this fight. Her son is buried on this land. She's 70 years old, and she spent 43 years documenting this case because she knew that Indigenous people have to prove everything beyond any shadow of doubt. She did that. The evidence is overwhelming. The law is clear. We ask this court to enforce the treaty that the United States government signed. Halstead's attorney rises, a high-powered lawyer from Washington, D.C., brought in specifically for this case. Your Honor, my client invested $47 million in good faith reliance on county permits that were properly issued according to state law. Judge Chen interrupts. Counselor, did your client conduct a title search? Well, yes, the standard county title search. Did that search reveal the property was within the original 1851 treaty boundaries? A pause. The 1952 survey was the operative. Did the title search reveal the 1952 survey was fraudulent? Your Honor, we relied on the county's determination. The county doesn't own treaty land, Counselor. The federal government and the Lakota Nation are the only parties with standing to determine treaty boundaries. Did your client consult with either before investing $47 million? The permitting process, did your client know about the burial sites? Another pause. An archaeological survey was conducted, and that survey found 47 burial sites, protected under federal law. Did your client proceed with development despite knowing about those graves? The attorney's voice drops. The county determined that development could proceed with appropriate mitigation. The county cannot authorize desecration of federal protected burial sites. Counselor, your client's financial losses are not this court's concern. Federal law is this court's concern. And your client violated federal law, knowingly. That's not good faith. She turns to Rebecca. Ms. Mankiller, I've reviewed your evidence. Your mother's documentation is extraordinary. The historical record is clear. The 1952 survey was fraudulent. The subsequent land transactions were void. Judge Chen pauses, letting the weight of the moment settle. This court finds: 1. The Treaty of Fort Laramie, 1851, remains valid and enforceable. 2. The land in question, all 4,700 acres within the disputed survey zone, lies within treaty-protected Lakota territory. 3. The 1952 boundary survey violated federal law and is hereby declared void ab initio, void from the beginning. 4. All land sales, transfers, permits, and development approvals based on that fraudulent survey are void as a matter of law. 5. The land is hereby restored to the Lakota Nation, represented by the Lakota Treaty Council, effective immediately. 6. Federal protection under the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act is granted to all burial sites. 7. The United States Department of the Interior is ordered to conduct a comprehensive review of all treaty lands in South Dakota to identify and remedy similar violations. 8. This court commends Sarah Mankiller for her decades of meticulous advocacy. Her work has exposed a systematic failure of federal treaty obligations that must be remedied. The courtroom erupts, cheers, tears, tribal elders embracing. Rebecca's composure breaks and she's crying openly. Judge Chen bangs her gavel. Order! I'm not finished. 9. The court is referring this matter to the United States Attorney for criminal investigation into conspiracy to defraud, bribery, evidence destruction, and civil rights violations. The evidence suggests systematic corruption that demands prosecution. 10. The permanent injunction is granted. The land is protected. The treaty is enforced. She looks directly at Halstead, who's gone ashen. Mr. Halstead, you gambled $47 million on the assumption that you could ignore federal law if it was profitable enough. You lost. This court hopes it serves as a lesson. As the courtroom celebrates, Sarah sits quietly, her eyes closed. Rebecca leans over. Mom, we won! Sarah opens her eyes, and they're wet. Your father won. We just finished it for him. The downfall comes swiftly for those who tried to steal sacred land. Marcus Halstead is indicted on 17 federal counts: conspiracy to defraud, bribery of public officials, attempted evidence destruction, violation of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. His investors sue him for the lost $47 million. His wife files for divorce. His company files for bankruptcy within 3 months. The last image of him is being led from federal court after his arraignment. Photographers shouting questions he refuses to answer. He'll eventually plead guilty to avoid trial, receiving a 7-year federal prison sentence. Commissioner Patricia Voss, having cooperated extensively, receives 18 months and a $400,000 fine, the exact amount of her kickbacks. She's also permanently barred from holding public office. Her political career, built on promises of transparent governance, ends in utter disgrace. County Judge Morrison, who signed the eviction order, is censured by the State Judicial Review Board and retires early. The Bar Association is investigating whether he should be disbarred. Governor Michaels avoids criminal charges. The campaign donations were legal, and he can claim plausible deniability about the details. But his political career is over. His approval ratings collapse. A primary challenger emerges, running on a platform of respecting tribal sovereignty. The governor announces he won't seek re-election, citing family reasons. Sheriff Tom Breckenridge makes a different choice. He appears before the Lakota Treaty Council at their meeting on the Pine Ridge Reservation. The room is packed with tribal elders, some who remember when Breckenridge's grandfather helped enforce the land theft in the 1950s. My grandfather, Howard Breckenridge, was part of the systematic theft of your land. He used his position to enrich himself and his friends. He betrayed the trust of his office and the dignity of the badge. I can't undo what he did, but I can make sure it never happens again in Bennett County. I'm implementing new protocols, mandatory federal law training for all officers, a tribal liaison position, and a county policy that we will never enforce state or local orders that conflict with federal treaty law. I'm also requesting that the Treaty Council assign a representative to review any county actions that might affect tribal land or rights before we take action. I'm sorry for what my grandfather did, for what I almost did 2 weeks ago. I should have questioned that eviction order harder. I didn't. That's on me. The room is silent. Then an elder in the back stands, a man in his 80s wearing a Vietnam veteran cap. Your grandfather took my family's land in 1955, told us we had 24 hours to leave. We lost everything. I've hated the name Breckenridge my whole life. The sheriff nods, accepting it. But you came here. You apologized. You're trying to do better. That's more than your grandfather ever did. We accept your apology, Sheriff. Let's build something better together. It's not forgiveness, not yet, but it's a start. 6 months later, March 17, 2027. The ceremony is held on a clear spring day, the South Dakota prairie awakening from winter. The 4,700 acres are being formally transferred from county ownership to the Lakota Nation in a federal ceremony attended by the Secretary of the Interior. Representatives from all 7 bands of the Lakota Nation are present. Cheyenne and Arapaho leaders are here. They were also signatories to the 1851 treaty. Members of Congress, federal judges, and thousands of tribal members who've come to witness this moment of justice. Sarah Mankiller stands at the center, wearing traditional dress, her daughter Rebecca beside her. They've both been asked to speak. The Secretary of the Interior goes first, reading from prepared remarks that acknowledge the federal government's failure to protect the treaty and praising Sarah's persistence. It's political speech, careful and measured. Then Sarah steps to the microphone. She speaks in Lakota first, a long statement that many in the crowd understand. Then she switches to English for the broader audience. Today we do not celebrate victory. We celebrate justice, which should never have been a fight. My husband Thomas died fighting for this. My son Michael is buried in this soil. My ancestors rest here. For 175 years, the United States government made a promise. Today, they are finally keeping it. But let's be clear about what this moment means. This land is not being given to us. It was never lawfully taken from us. The Treaty of 1851 guaranteed it in perpetuity. We are simply being returned what was always ours. And it should not have taken 43 years of one old woman's work to make this happen. It should not have required a federal lawsuit, an FBI investigation, and national media attention. The government that signed the treaty should have been protecting it all along. This land will be protected now. The graves will be honored. Our children will know who they are and where they come from. And if anyone ever tries to take it again. She holds up the leather document case, now famous from news coverage. They'll answer to every Lakota lawyer I've trained in the last 40 years. And we know the law better than they do. The crowd laughs and applauds. She's not done. To the developers and politicians who tried to steal this land, you thought we would give up, disappear, forget. You were wrong. We are the children of survivors. We carry our treaties like our grandmothers carried our future. We will never stop fighting for what is ours. To the young people here, learn the law, document everything, build cases that cannot be denied, because they will try again, in other places, other ways, and you need to be ready. To my husband Thomas, we won, my love, finally. Rest easy. She steps back from the microphone, tears streaming down her face for the first time in public. Rebecca takes over, her voice thick with emotion. My father would be so proud of what my mother accomplished, and I'm honored to continue the work. I've been offered a position as director of the Mankiller Center for Tribal Land Rights, a new organization funded by the settlement from this case. We'll be training indigenous lawyers, documenting treaty violations across the country, and providing legal support for tribal nations fighting to protect their land. 20 students are enrolled in our first class. We'll teach them what my mother taught me: patience, preparation, and the power of promises written on paper 175 years ago. Because the fight doesn't end here. There are 370 active treaty disputes in the United States right now. Thousands of acres of indigenous land still stolen. Hundreds of burial sites still threatened. But now we have precedent. We have a model. We have my mother's 2,400 pages of documentation showing exactly how to win. So to every tribe fighting to protect their land, we're coming to help. And we're bringing 43 years of experience with us. The ceremony concludes with traditional songs and the formal signing of the land transfer documents. Sarah's hand shakes slightly as she signs her name on behalf of the Lakota Treaty Council. The Secretary of the Interior signs for the United States government. A promise 175 years delayed, finally kept. Afterward, in a quiet moment, Sarah walks to her son's grave. The marker has been upgraded, a beautiful stone engraved with his name, his service dates, and the words, "He died defending his country. His mother defended his resting place." She places her hand on the stone. "We did it, Michael. The land is safe now. You can rest." 5 years later. Sarah is 75 years old now, moving a bit slower, but still sharp as ever. The Mankiller Center for Tribal Land Rights has grown beyond anything she imagined. What started with 20 students has expanded to a full legal clinic, a research archive, and a national advocacy network. They've supported 43 treaty cases across 16 states. 17 of those cases have resulted in land returns or protective orders. Sarah teaches one class a semester, advanced treaty law and land claims documentation. Her students range from fresh law school graduates to tribal elders pursuing late career law degrees. She's demanding, meticulous, and legendary. Today is graduation for the 5th class. Rebecca, now the full-time director, presides over the ceremony. Sarah sits in the front row, watching 23 new advocates receive their certificates. Rebecca addresses the graduates. My mother's first rule: document everything. Her second rule: know the law better than those who try to break it. Her third rule: never fight alone. Your people are your strength. You're graduating today as tribal land rights advocates. You'll face powerful opponents, wealthy developers, corrupt officials, legal systems designed to ignore indigenous rights. But remember, one 70-year-old Lakota woman with a Harvard Law degree and 43 years of patience brought down a $2 billion land grab. She faced 25 armed officers and didn't flinch. She faced FBI skepticism and proved her case. She faced a system designed to defeat her, and she won. Imagine what 23 of you can do together. The graduates applaud. Many are crying. They've learned not just law, but legacy. After the ceremony, a young Navajo woman approaches Sarah. She's 26, fresh from law school, fire in her eyes. Ms. Mankiller, I'm from Black Mesa. There's a coal company trying to expand mining on our land. They have permits from the state, but we think the original leases violated federal law. Sarah's eyes light up. This is what she's trained them for. Tell me about the leases. When were they signed? What consultation process was followed? Do you have the original documents? I have everything. I've been documenting for 3 years, following your methods. Sarah smiles. Good, then you're ready. File the federal complaint. Send me the case number. We'll support you. You'll help? Helping is what we do. You're not alone anymore. The young woman walks away with purpose, another soldier in the long war to protect indigenous land. Rebecca joins her mother. You should rest. You've been teaching all day. I'll rest when I'm dead. Until then, there's work to do. Mom, you won. The land is protected. The precedent is set. You can slow down. Sarah looks at her daughter with infinite patience. The land I fought for is protected. What about the Black Mesa coal expansion, the pipeline through Blackfeet territory, the uranium mining near Laguna Pueblo? There are 300 active cases, Rebecca. My work isn't done until all of it is done. That's impossible. You're one person. I'm 23 people now. Next year, I'll be 46. And the year after that, 92. That's how we win. Not by fighting harder, but by fighting smarter and training others to carry it forward. She stands slowly, her knees protesting. Your father and I spent our lives on one piece of land. You'll spend your life on dozens. Your students will spend their lives on hundreds. That's legacy. Not what you accomplish yourself, but what you make possible for others. Rebecca hugs her mother. I love you. And I'm so proud to be your daughter. I love you too. Now help me to the car. My knees are killing me, and I have 3 case files to review tonight. As they walk to the parking lot, Sarah pauses to look back at the Mankiller Center, a modern building on land the Lakota Nation now owns, land that once would have been casino parking lots if she hadn't fought. The building's cornerstone bears an inscription: Sarah Mankiller, Treaty Defender, Land Protector, Justice Keeper. We are still here. We will always be here. She reads it every time she visits, and every time she thinks, not me, we, always we. The documentary crew arrives on a bright June morning in 2032. Sarah is 79 now, her hair completely white, her movements careful, but her mind undimmed. They're filming a retrospective, 10 years since the treaty victory, national PBS production. They want her story told for posterity. She agrees on one condition. You tell the whole story, not just me. Everyone who fought, everyone who documented, everyone who stood witness. This was never about one person. The interviewer, a young indigenous journalist from CBC, asks the question everyone once answered. Looking back on everything, the decades of work, the personal cost, the victory, was it worth it? Sarah considers this carefully. My husband died fighting this fight. The stress, the frustration, the humiliation of being called crazy when he was telling the truth, it killed him at 63. My son is buried on that land. I spent 43 years of my life on this case. 43 years that I could have spent traveling, enjoying retirement, being a normal grandmother. Was it worth it? She pauses, looking directly at the camera. There are 4,700 acres of Lakota land that would be casino parking lots if I hadn't fought. There are 47 burial sites that would be paved over. There are 17 other treaty cases that used our precedent to protect their land. There are 92 tribal land rights lawyers we've trained who are fighting similar battles across this country. My husband's name is no longer synonymous with crazy conspiracy theorist. It's synonymous with the man who was right. My son rests in protected land, honored and remembered. So yes, it was worth every minute, every sleepless night, every day of being dismissed and ignored, because we proved that treaties still matter, that indigenous people cannot be erased, that patience and documentation can defeat corruption and greed. We won, and that victory will protect our people for generations. The interviewer asks, what would you say to young indigenous people facing similar fights today? Sarah's answer is immediate. Document everything. Trust nothing. Know the law better than your opponents. Build coalitions. Never fight alone. And never, ever give up. They want you to give up. They want you to be so exhausted, so demoralized, so intimidated that you just walk away. Don't give them that satisfaction. Your ancestors survived genocide, survived forced relocation, survived boarding schools and cultural erasure and every attempt to make you disappear. You come from survivors. Act like it. She leans forward, her voice intense. And learn the law. The law is power. The law is a weapon. The law is the treaty your ancestors signed and the promises the United States government made. Hold them to those promises. Force them to keep their word. That's how we win. Not with violence, not with anger, with documentation, with persistence, with the law they wrote being used against them when they violate it. The interviewer asks one final question. Do you think the fight for indigenous land rights will ever truly be over? Sarah laughs, a sound both bitter and amused. No, as long as there's profit in stolen land, someone will try to steal it. As long as there's political power in ignoring treaties, someone will try to ignore them. But I also know this, every generation of indigenous people has fought this fight, and every generation will continue fighting it. We're still here. We will always be here. That's the lesson. They thought they could wait us out, outlast us, that if they just ignored the treaties long enough, we'd disappear and the problem would solve itself. But we didn't disappear. We're still here, still fighting, still winning. And we're teaching our children the fight too. The camera pulls back, showing Sarah in her living room. The same room that was a command center 10 years ago, now converted back to a normal home but with file cabinets still lining one wall, just in case. On the mantel, photographs. Her husband Thomas, her son Michael, her daughter Rebecca, her grandchildren, and beside them, a framed copy of the Treaty of Fort Laramie, 1851, the document that started everything. The promise that was finally kept. Aerial footage sweeps across the 4,700 acres of protected treaty land. Spring grass waves in the wind. The burial sites are marked with respectful monuments. The sacred fire still burns in its traditional location, tended by tribal members who maintain the vigil. Where Marcus Halstead's casino resort would have stood, there's now the Mankiller Memorial Park. Trails wind through the prairie. Educational signs explain the treaty history, the 1952 fraud, the 2026 fight, and the ultimate victory. Young Lakota children play near the visitor center, running through the grass their ancestors fought to protect. They don't know yet about the decades-long battle. They just know this land is theirs, has always been theirs, will always be theirs. Sarah Mankiller's house still stands, preserved as a museum and research center. Visitors can see the war room, the timeline wall, the filing cabinets full of evidence. They can watch videos of the eviction attempt, the FBI investigation, the court victory. The final exhibit is Sarah's leather document case, displayed under glass, open to show the Treaty of Fort Laramie. The placard reads, "This case contained 175 years of broken promises." It also contained the proof that promises can still be kept. Sarah Mankiller carried it every day for 43 years. She never stopped believing the treaty had power. She was right. The camera rises higher, showing the full scope of the protected land. 7 tribal flags fly at the memorial park, representing the 7 bands that signed the treaty. And above them all, the Lakota flag, red and white stripes, circle of stars. Still here, still sovereign, still free. A title card appears. Sarah Mankiller continued fighting for indigenous land rights until her death in 2037 at age 84. Her work directly protected 127,000 acres of treaty land across 8 states. The Mankiller Center for Tribal Land Rights has trained over 400 indigenous lawyers and supported 89 successful land protection cases. Rebecca Mankiller serves as director of the center and as special counsel to the National Congress of American Indians. The Treaty of Fort Laramie remains in force as federal law. There are currently 340 active treaty disputes in the United States. The fight continues. Sarah, at 70, standing on her porch on the morning of the eviction attempt, facing down 25 vehicles with nothing but a leather case and absolute certainty. Her voice from archival audio. They think we'll give up, disappear, forget. But we are the children of survivors. We carry our treaties like our grandmothers carried our future, and we will never stop fighting for what is ours.